Come on, don't bullshit me.
Don't bullshit you. You don't bullshit me. Come on, man. What are you talking about? You're the one with the memory issues. Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Cinema Psych Podcast, the podcast where psychology meets film. I am your host, Dr. Alex Swan, and this episode, it's just going to be me and you, dear listener, just going to be me and you. I wanted to talk about a memory film. I was trying to figure out which movie I wanted to do for this episode as a solo episode, and, I'm going to go back to my roots here. I'm not a memory researcher by any stretch of the imagination, but it is the next closest topic that I've researched and I teach and all of that. So I wanted to go back to the well. Of course, the first episode of this entire show was about Memento. We revisited it later. Fascinating movie, probably my most favorite movie of all time. It's that good. If you haven't seen Memento, definitely take a look at that. But that's not the film we're doing today. I don't want to talk about Memento anymore because that's not the film that we are doing. We are going to explore Total Recall. That Total Recall, not the remake. The 1990 version with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the amazing practical effects of Paul Verhoeven. Now, we haven't seen a lot of Paul Verhoeven recently. I mean, he really existed in a time in memoriam in the 80s and 90s where you just made really weird action movies, sci-fi or otherwise. I mean, just consider the movies that even Arnold Schwarzenegger was in, not even just Paul Verhoeven movies, but just movies that Arnie was in were just random and weird and honestly the practical effects are just a world unto themselves in this movie. Some of my most favorite practical effects in any film, I mean, bar what they did in Jurassic, what Steven Spielberg and Stan Winston did in Jurassic Park. I mean, these effects are so fun. Perhaps my most favorite effect in this movie, and if you haven't seen it, well, I don't know what you're doing. Don't watch the Colin Farrell one. Poor remake. Poor remake. You watch the 1990 version with Arnie here. With Arnold, yes, you do. You watch the movie. Don't bullshit me. That's my Arnold. I might do more of it as we go on, but perhaps one of my most favorite effects, and then second effect. I mean, I'm not going to talk about the effects. This is not the kind of show that is. Go find an effects show. But one of my most favorite effects is the faces that everyone makes when they are out on the Mars surface. And they're starting to lose their sort of pressure in their bodies, and so their faces start popping out. Their eyes are bulging, and they're kind of just gasping for air in that way, and just Arnold. That sound effect will always stay with me from the first moment I watch this movie to every single time it comes up again and again and again. I'm glad I made the decision to watch this movie. My second favorite effect is the disguise that robot disguise that Arnold wears to try to get from Earth to Mars. And the face starts malfunctioning, and then it goes from an actress to this actress's face as it separates and reveals Arnold behind it. I think it's amazing. A couple of other people that are in this movie that have great roles. Sharon Stone plays a good two-faced liar. We've got Michael Ironside, so good as the bad guy. I just love his gruff voice. Like he's not evil in a way. He's more just like, I'm following orders, I suppose. A couple of other random actors. You can go to IMDb and look at all these random actors. That it's mostly an Arnold vehicle, and that's how it was made. It was made to showcase Arnold being a secret spy, so to speak. I guess. I don't know. You have to find out if he's actually a spy. So, a brief recap of the plot and the story. Now, spoiler alerts, of course, if you haven't seen this. But again, Arnold Schwarzenegger plays a guy named Doug Quaid, who's married to a woman, but has these weird dreams every night about being on Mars. And every time he dies in this dream, usually by his gas mask breaking and him asphyxiating, he wakes up and, well, it turns out that he may not be a guy named Doug Quaid. And so he's given the opportunity to go to, because he's playing this straight and narrow kind of guy, works at a construction site using a jackhammer to break up concrete. So he goes to this cool memory vacation organization called Recall. That is with a K. Recall with a K. Now you know we're in talking about memory here. So he goes to the place called Recall, and this company implants memories for a small fee, and you can have little extra add-ons here and there to get the secret agent.
I'm not interested in that.
You're gonna love this, Doug. We offer you a choice of alternate identities during your trip. Face it, why go to Mars as a tourist when you can go as a playboy or a famous jock or...
Secret agent. How much is that?
Let me tantalize you. You are a top operative, back under deep cover on your most important mission. People are trying to kill you left and right. You meet this beautiful, exotic woman.
Come on.
I don't want to spoil it for you, Doug, but you rest assured, by the time the trip is over, you get the girl, kill the bad guys, and save the entire planet. Now, you tell me, isn't that worth a measly 300 credits?
So he goes in, but little does everyone know that he actually is a secret agent, or is he? And in that way, he sets off the whole series of events of having to get to Mars to figure out what his life was before he seemingly went under this implanted memory procedure and was told that he was Doug Quaid, even though he is the secret agent for this sort of shadowy group called the Agency, a guy named Hauser. And so he gets to Mars. He's all the while trying to evade Michael Ironside's character as the security chief, using any means necessary to get him down. A lot of antics ensue for a good while. I think a good hour of like a sort of a cat and mouse chase game, and then you finally get to know more about why he needs to go to Mars and what the whole reason was that he needed to go under this memory implantation to be this Doug Quaid, this every Joe Schmo kind of guy. And makes it to Mars, and he finds out this group of mutants and rebels are trying to destroy the generator that Cohagen, the main villain of the story, is keeping under wraps, right? Because on Mars, you have to be able to be in this dome and breathe air, and he can. This Cohagen guy can control the airflow, and so it keeps the population of Mars subjugated to his whims. And the idea was you actually gotta blow up the generator, so all of the oxygen in this ancient stored in this like ancient alien architecture would essentially evaporate. I don't honestly the science, the chemistry and the atmospheric science is probably super wrong. I'm not an atmospheric scientist, I couldn't tell you, but all of this oxygen is enough in this ancient alien thing to essentially provide the entire surface of Mars a breathable atmosphere. So that's the plot. It's an Arnold Schwarzenegger action movie. Here's the thing: he succeeds, and just before his death due to asphyxiation, he's finally able to breathe oxygen again, and he's like, amazing. So let's take a dive, and let's travel to Mars and talk about the memory concepts in this movie.
It's your first trip?
Mm-hmm.
Well, don't worry. Things hardly ever up around here.
Good evening, Doug. I'm Dr. Love.
Nice to meet you.
Ernie, patch in Matrix 62B 37. And would you like us to integrate some alien stuff?
Sure, why not? Two-headed monsters?
Don't you keep up with the news? We're doing alien artifacts now.
It's wild.
Yeah, they date back 1,000,000 years. Ernie,
That's a new one. Blue sky on Mars.
been married long?
8 years.
Oh, I see. Slipping away for a little hanky-panky.
But really, I was always
All
fascinated
systems go.
with Mars.
Then we're set. Ready for Dreamland? I'll be asking you some questions, Doug, so we can fine-tune the ego program. You answer honestly, you'll enjoy yourself a whole lot more. Your sexual orientation.
Hetero.
So, how do you like your women? Blonde? Brunette? Redhead?
Brunette.
Slim? Athletic? Voluptuous?
Athletic.
Demure? Aggressive? Sleazy? Be honest?
Sleazy. Demure.
41A, Ernie.
Oh boy, is he gonna have a wild time. He's not gonna want to come back.
Oh, that's for sure.
Okay. So as I said, I wanted to do a movie that goes back to my cognitive psychology roots, essentially. Either considering that to be memory or considering that to be bias or anything like that. I know we did AI in the last episode, and this is sort of like a back-to-back cognitive 1-2 punch, but we haven't done a memory episode in a while, and I thought this would be interesting, and it's very clear-cut. It's also related to what I've done recently for my Wondrium course. Now, if you're not familiar with, or you don't follow me on Twitter, or you're not a Facebook friend or anything like that, you probably don't know that soon, probably within the next few months, hopefully by the Christmas season, my Wondrium course will be out. And that course is phenomenal because it's all about cognitive biases. So if you are interested in cognitive biases, then I definitely recommend looking into that. One of the episodes that I created, so this was these are about 25 to 30 minute long video lectures on a little more. So there's 24 lectures, but I incorporate probably around 30 to 32 biases, and I combine a few of them into a single episode. So in one episode, I talk about one set of memory biases that are very close together, which is errors due to the source of the information. So memory for the source, or where the memory came from. And so there is a fun word out there to describe these source monitoring errors when you think it's your idea. That's called cryptomnesia. But what I really want to talk about is false memories. False memories are a tale as old as memories themselves, as far as psychology is concerned. So within the history of memory research within psychology, false memories have always been discussed alongside. Now, false memories as sort of like an idea, I would say first got their play from the Freuds, both Anna and Sigmund, Anna being Sigmund's daughter, when they were talking about the ideas and concepts around what they call repressed memories. Now, repressed memories are really difficult to pin down. Like, how do you even describe what a repressed memory is, let alone the mechanism for repressing those memories, right? So those two systems would have to work, right? They have to in a single mind or a single brain. Like, you would have to have a system for memories being held without your knowledge, right? Those memories are not apparently consciously available to you. And then the other mechanism would be like what memories get repressed and what memories don't. And of course, for the Freuds, it was traumatic memories get repressed, not, really happy memories and all of that stuff. It's only trauma. And that trauma then, of course, manifested in later in life as these like subconscious driving forces that, indicate and dictate how people are behaving. And that they can't consciously access them, but they are directly or indirectly responsible for a given set of maladaptive behaviors. Now, recent research really blows the idea of repressed memories out of the water, and in the movie, we're not actually talking about repressed memories in the same sense that the Freuds discussed, right? So current research indicates that we actually remember the traumatic things that happen to us. We may not remember time, place, and the specifics of the events, but when we come down to it, we end up recognizing when something traumatic or tragic has happened to us, and typically those negative feelings associated with the memory are easily conjurable, whether we like it or not. So that's what the current research suggests about repressed memories, or the idea of repression. Is like, no, it's we don't get to hide trauma away. Unfortunately, that trauma is front and center. Now, in the movie, we're still dealing with memory implantation, and this is an idea that is really a fun one. Can somebody implant an idea into your brain that you are not aware of? Of course, Inception, if you want to go back to an early episode from 2019 where Jason Spiegelman and I talk about Inception and this idea of implanting a dream into someone, you kind of get along the same lines of what happens to Quaid in this movie. It is these memories that are not his, but are implanted into him. And of course, Recall as a company does this for randos across Earth, right? If you can't get into vacation, come here to explore Mars and have all of the sensations associated with exploring Mars when you really don't have to go to Mars. I mean, that's really cool. So this idea of implantation is where I want to take this discussion. Okay, so false memories are a bias toward memories that we think we have, or I'll say information that we think we have, that we experienced truly in the past, but really aren't something that we experienced at all. And so this idea of false memory implantation exists in the literature as what is called the DRM method. The DRM method. So this DRM method stands for Dease, Roediger, and McDermott. So back in the 1950s, James Dease, I believe it's James Dease, wrote a fun little research methodology where he would show people lists of words to remember, and then he would give them recognition tests. So he would say that old words and new words are going to appear on this list. You tell me which one's old, which one's new. And Henry Roediger and Kathleen McDermott updated it in the 1990s to really capture this idea of a word that is related to words that you learn in the learning phase, but are completely new words. So one example that I give in my classes is I give them 10 words. I'm going to give you these 10 words, and you can sort of play along if you'd like. These are the words that I use: waves, sand, surf, frisbee, sun, bikini, towel, ocean, boat, and tan. And so when I give this demo to my classes, I then engage in some, short-term memory distractions, and I tell them, we're going to answer questions as a group. First, we're going to say the alphabet backwards. This effectively clears out all of this stuff, all of these 10 words from their brain. And some people still get all 10, but I specifically ask, was beach one of the words that you remember? After I have them, after this distraction period, and I have them write down the words, I asked them if beach was one of the words they write down. And invariably, and this is what the fun part is, invariably I get at least a quarter of my students. I just recently did this in my Psych 101 class just a couple of weeks ago, and I got almost 50% of people raising their hands that beach was on the list. And dear listener, beach is not on the list, right? So how do these people remember beach being on the list? Well, they're not really remembering that beach was on the list. They're remembering that the organizational elaborative process of those 10 beach-related words are on the list. And it just so happens that they could conjure up a related word, beach. So these beach-related words, and of course, they come to the conclusion of beach. And so I love this demonstration. Again, you could ask the question, is this an actual false memory? And, it's not really, because it's not something that they experienced. And so I say, okay, so if that's not a false memory, then are the memories you have of a flashbulb time in your life, like a big tragic event like 9/11 or the Sandy Hook school shooting, or even Parkland just a few years ago, are those false memories? Like your recount of where you were, who you were with, what you were doing, are those false memories? And I specifically focus on 9/11 because a lot of the research about flashbulb memories have come from 9/11. And the idea I ultimately settle on is whether, people who have very vivid memories of 9/11, do they really have those vivid memories, or is it the outcome of the narrative rehearsal hypothesis, where details are quote unquote memories because they've heard the details so often, either their parents saying it or from the news or whatever, this idea of these details being constantly mentioned. So I asked then, are those false memories? And the answer is, well, maybe, because I know they're called flashbulb memories because they're vivid and our confidence in them remains high. But there is this piece of this narrative rehearsal hypothesis that suggests that maybe some aspects of the memory are not real, and we just attribute the source of those memories to our own experiences, when that is potentially not true. So that's where we're going to go with here when we talk about the idea of false memory with Quaid's experience in Total Recall. We're going to talk about how the DRM method as a sort of backdrop to implantation of memories, and then this sort of refinding and recalibrating of a person's memory can have outside influences, and potentially, if you're not dastardly enough, really cause someone to not believe you, especially if you're the bad guy. So so that's my Wondrium episode, and if that's something that you're interested in, please take a look at that when it comes. Of course, I'll be mentioning it on future episodes when that is out. Just a little cross promotion here and there.
Talk. I said talk.
I'm not your wife.
The hell you're not.
I swear to God, I never saw you before 6 weeks ago. Our marriage is just a memory implant.
You think I'm stupid? Remember our wedding?
Was implanted by the agency.
Falling in love.
Implanted.
Our friends, my job, 8 years together. Suppose all of this was implanted too?
The job's real. The agency set it up.
Bullshit.
They erased your identity and implanted a new one. I was written in as your wife so that I could watch you and make sure the erasure took. Sorry, Quaid. Your whole life is just a dream.
Okay then. If I'm not me, who the hell am I?
Beats me. I just work here. Doug, there's something I want you to know. You were the best assignment I ever had. Really.
I'm honored.
You sure you don't want to? Just for old time's sake? Come on. If you don't trust me, you can tie me up.
I didn't know you're so kinky.
Maybe it's time you found out.
Let's start with how memory is represented, or at least memory manipulation is represented in Total Recall here. So, like I said, Recall is a company that offers a person a vacation in their mind, right? With all of the feelings, sensations, and stuff that would come with the experience. First of all, let me tell you that this is completely farcical and will never happen in the most literal sense. Will never happen. I will stake my reputation on that. There will never be a time when an episodic memory will be implanted with the sensations and the experiences that we feel so strongly when we relive a memory. I don't think that'll ever happen. So it's kind of like Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, but in the exact opposite direction, right? Instead of removing memories, we're sort of putting new ones in on top of the ones that we kind of want to hide. Those memories aren't gone, though, because that's how Hauser is able to start piecing, or at least Quaid, Quaid gets to start piecing his old life back together, although he makes a proclamation at the end of the episode that he is no longer Hauser, that he is Doug Quaid, and that's the identity he's going to continue with after the events of the movie. That's what he specifically says. I'm going to do this. I am now this person, even though he's only experienced that person for like 6 or 8 weeks or something like that. As far as the timeline of the movie goes, remember, he of course thinks he's been Douglas Quaid his entire life. So we have that aspect of implanting a memory with all of the experiences and emotions and everything that goes along with episodic memory. And of course, episodic memory is different from the things that we know, which is called semantic memory, which doesn't have any of that. It's stripped away. It's basically stripped away knowledge. Endel Tolving used the words noetic and autonoetic, right? So noetic is knowing things, and autonoetic is knowing things about oneself. So if we're gonna use that Tolving distinction, then of course just knowing things is going to be different from knowing things about oneself, which includes the time, place, and experiences of those episodic memories. And those experiences are complex, right? So we have all of our senses: sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, the kinesthesis, touch sensations, even whether or not we were balanced through our vestibular sense. Like, we have all of these senses that contribute to a memory. And as Inside Out told us exceptionally well, is that emotions that are tied to a memory are complex. There are more than one emotion that gets tied to a memory, as joy and sadness find out that a memory can both be happy and sad, as far as Riley's life goes. And so we've got this company who can do this. All right, within the logic of the movie, that's fine. They can do this. I'm more than happy to suspend my disbelief. I just don't think it's not true, right? In a realistic sense. So it's not true, and you shouldn't think that it's true. This is far and away science fiction. Okay, much like the memory deletion of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is gonna be and forever will be science fiction. Of course, they show that this product doesn't actually work in that movie, and you can kind of see that maybe Recall is doing a little bit of fudging of the books, or at least fudging of the experience. I don't think they do what they say they do, as far as like what some of the characters are suggesting, especially the head guy in charge. So Quaid gets his memories changed. So he gets these new memories implanted, that he is a guy, and not Hauser, but he is a guy named Douglas Quaid. He has a wife who is played by Sharon Stone. He works a construction job, and he's just a big schmo. Like, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger who works a menial job. Okay, well, if he's a jackhammer, then I guess maybe he's got big muscles. I don't know. But he keeps having these dreams. And this is a fun little gag that Paul Verhoeven did, which was that, maybe gag isn't the right word, but like a little trick to cue the watcher, the film viewer, into the gag, which is that he keeps having these dreams, and dreams here are the manifestation of his prior memories. So knowing this woman named Melina on Mars, knowing who the freedom fighters are working for, who these mutants are, what would happen if this ancient... he knows all of these things, and they're expressed in this convoluted kind of way through his dreams. Okay? But really, it's just 6 to 8 weeks of a new identity that is being fought in his own mind with, however old Hauser is. We'll just say he's in his late 30s. I don't know how old Arnold Schwarzenegger was in 1990. Somebody could go look that up. But let's say he was 35. Probably 40, but still, 35 plus years versus 6 to 8, you can see where you might have a problem with your identity. It's sort of like the MK Ultra planning that the CIA really did, trying to program people using hallucinogenic and psychoactive drugs. The idea here being that maybe we can train soldiers to, turn on their fighting mode a la Jason Bourne in the Bourne novels and movies when we need them to, and then just go about their daily lives when we don't need them, just, kind of do that. And that similar kind of quote unquote programming where instead of Quaid's experience through dreams and sort of a sensation that something isn't quite right, and that's why he decides to go to recall to get that Mars experience, because maybe it was just him dreaming about needing to go to Mars, and what better way to go to Mars than not actually go to Mars, which is why this is the precipitating catalytic action of the movie, that him going to recall in general was, to sort of quiet his dream brain. Like, okay, that's what I need to do. Well, in reality, it was his other memories saying, yo, we need to get out of this cave, yo. And so rather than blunt force trauma, which is experienced by Jason Bourne in the first movie, that dislodges his program, and he's like, where am I? Who am I? Oh, I'm this guy named Jason Bourne, and I have all these awesome talents. Like, what is going on? And Quaid sort of has an understanding, sort of an inkling as to why, this sort of feeling of familiarity. And that's a really important aspect of this movie, regardless of the actual science of memory behind this. There is this idea of recognition where things are familiar to a person, and you're just struggling with the no, sort of like deja vu. Is this something that I've actually experienced before? Okay. Now, recognition is what Quaid is really grappling with here. Instead of the total recall here, you being a double entendre for not only like remembering things, but also like I'm being recalled back to the place that I once was, which is in this case Mars. So he gets these memories implanted in his brain, but it's not erasing. It's doing an incomplete overwrite. Maybe using computer terms here, computer metaphor of memory, using an overwrite as opposed to delete and replace. So an overwriting may not actually get rid of the existing memories. And there you go. There's the familiarity aspect. And then, of course, he goes to recall. He gets what is considered what is called a schizoid embolism, excuse me.
What is it?
You better get down here.
Look, I am with a very important client.
It looks like we got another schizoid embolism.
I'll be right back.
Mr. McLean? Mr. McLean?
Bob, what's wrong?
Don't let her leave.
Get off you blew my cover!
What the fuck is going on here? You can't do a simple goddamn double implant.
It's not my fault we hit a memory cap.
They'll be here any minute. They kill you
What the hell
all!
is he talking about?
Oh, no!
Let me go!
Mr. Quaid, try to calm down.
My name is not Quaid. You untie me
Hurry, grab
now!
his leg!
Untie me!
Hold it down, quick!
Let me go!
Are you all right? Listen to me. He has been going on and on about Mars. He has really been there.
Use your head, you dumb bitch. He's just acting out the secret agent portion of his ego trip.
I'm afraid that's not possible.
Why not?
Because we haven't implanted it yet.
Oh, shit. Oh, shit.
I've been trying to tell you. Someone has erased his memory.
They say that we hit a memory cap, and that's that's really funny to me. A memory cap, like somebody put a lid on his old memories, and as they were installing this Mars vacation, but him as a secret agent, then that hits too close to home because that's what he actually was. We find out later that Hauser, probably under his under duress, was did this on purpose. And so they hit this memory cap. Later in the film, an operative from the agency comes in and says that he's a doctor, and that everything that's occurring in the movie at the moment and previously was him dreaming.
I love you.
Right. That's why he tried to kill me.
No, I'd never do anything to hurt you. I want you to come back to me.
Bullshit.
What's bullshit, Mr. Quaid? That you're having a paranoid episode triggered by acute neurochemical trauma? Or that you're really an invincible secret agent from Mars who's the victim of an interplanetary conspiracy to make him think he's a lowly construction worker? Stop punishing yourself, Doug. You're a fine, upstanding man. You have a beautiful wife that loves you. Your whole life is ahead of you. But you've got to want to return to reality.
Let's assume I do. Then what?
Swallow this.
What is it?
It's a symbol of your desire to return to reality. Inside your dream, you'll fall asleep.
All right. Let's say you're telling the truth and this is all a dream. Then I could pull this trigger and it won't matter.
Doug, don't.
It won't make the slightest difference to me, Doug. But the consequences to you would be devastating. In your mind, I'll be dead, and with no one to guide you out, you'll be stuck in permanent psychosis.
Doug, let Dr. Edgemore help you.
The walls of reality will come crashing down. 1 minute, you'll be the savior of the rebel cause, and the next thing you know, you'll be Cohagen's bosom buddy. You'll even have fantasies about alien civilizations, as you requested, but in the end, back on Earth, you'll be lobotomized. So get a grip on yourself, Doug, and put down that gun.
And that he needs to take a pill. Kind of, I wonder where the Wachowskis got this for the Matrix, right? Where he has to take this pill to wake back up at recall, and so they could get the schizoid embolism under control. Sort of like a lucid dream is how they describe it in the movie. Otherwise, that he is going to be stuck in a permanent psychosis. Well, there are a lot of things that don't line up for Quaid, and so he shoots the guy in the head and ultimately does not believe Sharon Stone's character, who was brought back in to play his wife, and like try to get him to react, and he ends up not. Of course, why would he? I love how they play this one because some of the dialogue here is so fun, right? So Recall Inc. is by the memory of always wanted, for the memory of a lifetime. That's their motto or slogan. But he's told not to go there because he could get lobotomized or become sort of a person in a vegetative state. His friend tells him, right? His friend Harry, who also works for the agency, of course. The company Recall calls these first-class memories, as opposed to what, second-class, third-class, cattle car memories. I would love to know the distinction of what kinds of what's the sliding scale of memories? Like, are second-class memories just worse memories? Are they bad memories? Like, I don't know. This is quite the pitch, right? And so, in the moment, Quaid asks, how real are they? And of course, the guy at Recall says, as real as any memory in your head. Your brain won't know the difference. And that line right there foreshadows the rest of the movie. Because Paul Verhoeven does a really good job. Now, I don't think it's as... let me complete my thought here. Paul Verhoeven does a really good job of sort of trying to keep the audience guessing. I don't think there is a Inception level confusion, like, what's the real answer? Does the top that is spinning at the end, does it fall over? Like, is he stuck in a dream? Is this where he wants to be? I don't think that level of movie guessing is required to watch the rest of this film. I think it's a tactic meant to confuse Quaid by a tactic by the agency. But I think it's important to note here because it's not as real as any memory in your head, because his real memories start to take over whatever was implanted in his head. It starts to take over. So not only are you given that information as truth, of course, it's a marketing tactic, as the audience, but once you get that told to you from this, sleazy Recall Inc. guy, you kind of have to call that into question. Obviously, it's not, because why would we keep having these dreams that are trying to indicate to him that he had a previous life before he was Doug Quaid? It's an important distinction. At least I think so. It's an important distinction. Now, when we get to Mars, there's a lot of things that are going on. His memory has been so messed with that he doesn't remember Melina, and Melina, of course, remembers him as Hauser, and she doesn't know who this Quaid person is. She's like, I loved you, and he was like, I don't know who you are. And this shows a good example of retrograde amnesia. Or at least retrograde-like amnesia, because it's not actually retrograde amnesia. Retrograde amnesia is caused by brain trauma. Maybe you could say that Recall Inc. messing, or the agency messing with his memories, is sort of brain trauma. I mean, I guess it is in the within the consistency of the logic of the movie, but I don't know. I would call it retrograde-like. Amnesia, and this is just not having any memory of past events, which I think is actually the most tragic aspect of this film. You're not supposed to feel much of anything for any of these characters. It's an action movie with weird, gory effects and goofy stakes. I mean, there's no real emotion to be evoked from a movie like this. But you do kind of see that, in this exchange with Melina, after he's got some time to calm down and regroup himself. I mean, once he gets to Mars, it's like bang, 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 one thing after another. The agency's only ever a couple of steps behind him. But in this moment of breathing where, Melina and him can have this connection, you kind of feel bad for the guy. Like, imagine if that was you. And you have this whole identity around something that has only existed for 6 to 8 weeks, and you know nothing except for a few video interactions of who you were previously. But the fun thing about this moment is, and especially for someone who is suffering from retrograde amnesia, is the power that cues have in our understanding of emotion. I mean, cues are incredibly powerful when it comes to getting us back to those previous situations. And just think to yourself, the last time you were trying to remember something, or maybe not even trying to remember something, and you walk into a store, or you experience some kind of sensation that you felt before. I usually like using music or smells when I talk about this idea with students, because those two things, music and smells, have a real strong connection with memory in general. I recently saw a meme on Twitter where somebody laments that they wish that they could remember the facts of my of classes, as well as my brain remembers song lyrics. And I thought that was like 100% accurate because, right, music is so powerful and which is why most cultures have some form of music, so powerful to our existence and our memories. This is why we have trigger or content warnings in a lot of cases when talking about traumatic or violent or powerful issues, because these cues are strong and they can bring all sorts of things back into our memories. And so I think for Quaid, in this moment on Mars, having this conversation with Melina about him not remembering her, but, sort of remembering aspects of her. She is the woman from his dreams at the beginning of the movie, so he has some inkling of who she is. He just doesn't know that he was in love with her, and he was doing things to work toward a cause for a better life of these Mars residents. And I think that's just a really powerful thing. Of course, a really powerful thing as indicated by a psychologist who is fine with doing these kinds of things in movies where maybe that intent wasn't actually there on purpose. I don't know if Paul Verhoeven had this idea in his mind. He's like, oh yeah, well, we have he's Dutch, I'm not going to try to do a Dutch accent. Because it probably just sound like Goldmember. We have this idea here where he's going to have this retrograde like amnesia, but the cues are really, really powerful. No, this is me, doing the analysis, of course. And I note that like he spends a moment like smelling Melina, which of course is kind of gross from most aspects. Like we don't want random people smelling us and be like, that smell reminds me of something, and we're like, oh, it reminds you of what? Oh God, right? We don't want to hear that from strangers. But for someone like Melina, it's a cue for him to start remembering her, especially when she starts kissing him. I mean, like, come on, those sensations, the sensation of the lips. Yeah, you're not going to forget that. You're definitely not going to forget that. At least in my opinion, you're not going to forget that. Right. I'd be happy to hear some counter examples of people not having a physical sensation as a cue for a memory. Because I got to tell you, it's there, especially when there is lots of other things that happen after kissing as far as the cue goes. But, just smell in general works much the same way that I talked about music. Okay, so the last thing that I want to leave you with here in this episode is just some sort of rhetorical, philosophical questions. I know that I have nobody to respond to these questions directly, but I thought I'd leave them with you the same way I leave them with my students, right? So these are not questions that we are going to answer right now. These are not questions that we have the answers to right now. Maybe we will have the answers to them. Maybe we never will, which I think is fun. Same way that you heard me and Jim talking about if you listen to last episode on AI, artificial intelligence. Like, we don't know a lot about consciousness. We know what some aspects of it are, but we don't really know what it is. We know what it's not, and we know what some aspects are, but we don't know what it is. So I leave you with these questions. And take them or leave them. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Definitely catch me on our socials if you have good responses to these, or at least your attempt at coming up with an explanation. I love lay theories. Lay theories are fun. They give me an indication of how non-psychologists feel and think about the work that psychologists do. It's great. I love it. So catch me on the socials, Sin Sci Pod on both Facebook and Twitter, SinSciPod. Sin, obviously not S-I-N, but C-I-N, the first syllable of cinema, of course. SinSciPod. So the first syllables of each of the title, for each of the words of our title. Cinema, Psych, Podcast. SinSciPod on both Facebook and Twitter. Or you can catch me directly at Prof. A. Swan on Twitter. So that's at Prof. A. Swan. I really should change that to Coxsite Prof, but I'm getting ahead of myself here. Anyways, these questions. Okay. So my first question for you, dear listener, is can a person really have a false memory or memories implanted into their minds, either via a process that is cursorily described in this movie, Total Recall, as described in Inception through, layered dreaming, or even kind of like how Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind deals with like taking those memories away. Can somebody really implant a false memory into you, or is it just an issue with your memory system not being the most accurate thing in the world? Don't get me wrong, human memory is it's awe-inspiring. I use awesome too much, but it honestly, I mean, so awesome has lost its meaning as far as like something being, full of awe. And of course, awful means something else entirely. But it's really awe-inspiring how really good our memory is, for all of its foibles, for all of its mistakes, for all of its biases. It is perhaps one of the most important things to human evolution. And again, I will. That's a hill I will die on. I mean, there are a lot of things that are important to our evolution. Of course, they all are. Our entire history is predicated on the fact that we have evolved all of these cooperating and cooperating systems. But I do think memory is up there. I think it is one of the most important things that we evolved in conjunction with our big brain. We are big brains on Brett's over here, right? So is a false memory possible, or is it just a function, or I should say not a function, but a byproduct of a biased cognitive system? The second question that I have for you has to do with the sort of overriding that I talked about that goes on in Quaid's head, right? So they didn't fully get rid of who Hauser was, because of course he starts to remember who Hauser is, or at least what Hauser did. And I'm talking about Quaid here, of course, right? I said that he adopts that name and that self as his self moving forward. He doesn't go back to Hauser. He doesn't know who Hauser is. So can a person's real memories be erased or suppressed in such a way that false memories take over? So this movie would have you believe that, yes, that's effective for a while, 6 to 8 weeks, of course. I mean, we only see the end of this experience. And that's only because he goes to recall. It's only because Quaid goes to recall. So if he never went to recall, I guess the question becomes, does the false memories take over? I want to hazard a no. So that's my tentative answer is no. So, but if they do, will they express themselves as dreams? Like, this is something that we don't really know much about dreams yet, right? We're still, again, a lot of things we don't know about human cognition, and dreams are one of it, right? Because we go to sleep, and sleep is an altered state of consciousness where different things happen in our body than when we are awake. We have different brain waves, for example. And then there are different brain waves for different stages of sleep, too. So it's just like, oh my God, what is going on in that brain of yours, my friend? So since we don't know that much about dreams, is this the case where, would false memories then manifest as these mundane things that we experience on a daily basis? I mean, that's the vast majority of dreams that people have. And of course, many people don't even remember their dreams that were, of course, of the mundane variety. And every once in a while, we have some fantasy kinds of dreams. But I mean, there is an interesting similarity amongst all human dreams, which is that people don't usually die in their dreams. So if you're experiencing some distress that could lead to your death in a dream, is that representing something that's realer? I'm getting into super sci-fi vibes here, but these are of course rhetorical questions. And one of the tricks that the agency, and this is my last question, one of the tricks that the agency pulls in this movie is trying to convince this whole like schizoid embolism. I mean, I would imagine schizoid, the word, was chosen purposefully to represent what we sort of, at least in the 1990s, what we as psychologists, I'm sort of lumping myself in there, but what previous psychologists sort of thought of as schizophrenia in 1990 or in the late 80s, very different to how schizophrenia is viewed now as a psychotic disorder. But 20, 30 years ago, the idea was different, and a lot of focus was on paranoia and delusions. And of course, these are potential hallmarks, symptoms, positive symptoms of schizophrenia. You can have delusions. These are just false beliefs, beliefs in things that are demonstrably false, like that you can bring evidence, of factual evidence to bear. And then paranoia, this idea that you're being watched and people are looking at you and waiting for you and all of that stuff. So the agency tries to convince Quaid that he is delusional and paranoid. Can you actually convince someone with false memories that them trying to break out of those false memories is delusional or paranoid? Oh, I think that's a spicy question. What do you think? Because, I mean, knowing what I know about false memories, I tend to go on the side of, if this was actually real, if you could implant false memories in somebody, of course, you'd have to suspend your disbelief even just for that. As I said earlier in the episode, this is a no way, no how, most likely. So, but if, let's say if we can do this recall thing, what then happens, right? There's ethical considerations. There are human interaction and interpersonal considerations. There's, of course, a capitalistic consideration. Why would a company get to have a proprietary hold or grasp on memory technology? Shouldn't everyone be able to access this without cost or whatever? Is the experience of these kinds of memories offered by recall above and beyond a normal experience? These kinds of philosophical questions do also then get backed up with ethical concerns as well as practical and economical concerns. I am so glad I remembered this movie, because I don't think if I would have thought of it earlier this week to do it for this this solo episode, which would not have been a solo episode, but I had to do a little rescheduling. So, I'm so glad this movie exists, and I get to talk about memory more, because that's one of the most fascinating things about watching movies is how do they play with memory. And that's where I'm going to leave it with you, dear listener. Thank you for listening to this solo episode, me talking about the randomness of a 1990 action movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger. A lot of fun quotes come out of this movie. If you are from the generation of the early internet soundboards like me, you probably did some prank calling with this with the Arnie soundboard, calling people sons of bitch. You son of a bitch. Don't bullshit me. You know, these phrases. I mean, you're probably going to hear more. You've probably heard more as I interspersed some clips of the movie. But man, oh man, this movie is fun. I love this movie so much. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much. Until the next one. Thanks for listening.